Blessings, a community of spouses. Listen, Coach T here with you on today, and I had to come and take my little walk, get out the house. But while I was out here, I had some time to hear from God, and I want to share some things with you today. And one of those things is about waiting it out. A lot of times I hear and see spouses who have gotten to a place where they have given up. They done threw in the towel. They done threw in the keys. You can have this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going on. And their mind is pretty much made up. And so a lot of times you see other people who have divorced or who have separated from their spouses, and their life looks good. Their life look like, man, how can I be a part of that team? How can I join that club? Since your divorce, you've been, higher than high. Since your divorce, you've been like all tens. Since your divorce, I have never seen you this happy. Since you separated from that person, you are like living your best life. Since your separation and you no longer in that situation, things are going so well for you. It seems like all of a sudden things are going so well for you. Let me tell you something. You have to know your assignment concerning your marital covenant. And maybe for those spouses, maybe for those individuals, that was the plan of God for their life. Maybe for them, that was the plan of God for their life. But that does not necessarily mean that is God's plan for your life. You can mess around and jump into something like that and be out of the will of God. And anytime we're out the will of God, if you do something like that, you're going to have to end up starting all over again. God is going to have his way in your life regardless. So don't get caught up in what you see. Don't get caught up in what may be working for another person. That might not be necessarily your story. Your story with your husband or wife is your story. Don't allow what another individual has done, another spouse, another married couple has done to influence your decision about your marital covenant. So that was just the first thing I want to talk to you about. The second thing I want to talk to you about, and this is a biggie. I want to speak to the ones who are dealing with a spouse, a loved one, someone close to them who are addicted to substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, whether it's some type of drugs, prescription, street drugs, whatever it may be. I want to speak to you today, especially during this quarantine time, because one thing people are doing is making moves and making decisions. Okay, that's just facts. People are making moves, making decisions. People are evaluating their lives and looking things over, and you should. And so I just want to speak to my spouses today and make sure that you are making sure that you are hearing from God, If you are dealing with a spouse or an individual or a loved one who is dealing with some type of substance abuse, I want to share a few tips with you. Now, it is hard. First, before I get to that, anytime you're dealing with a spouse, or individual, a loved one that's dealing with substance abuse, whether through street drugs, whether through alcoholism or what have you, prescription drugs, if they've got addicted to prescription drugs or using prescription drugs in the wrong way, you have to know that you are no longer dealing with that person that you know. You're no longer dealing with the individual who you know to be your spouse, you know to be your husband, you know to be your wife, you know to be your loved one. You're not dealing with that person anymore. That's first. And because you're not dealing with that person anymore, you have to recognize the spirit that they're coming in. They are no longer the person that you think they are. Drugs, substance abuse, those type of things, you're dealing with a sorcery spirit. And a sorcery spirit it goes in the same category as witchcraft. And so you have to be very, very careful when you're dealing with a person in this area. One of the things you want to make sure that boredom is not your portion. Boredom is not your portion. And the reason I want to put boredom out there and bring that to your attention, because sometimes, especially right now with us going through quarantine time, sometimes you can be bored, you don't have nothing to do, you know, you feel like doing something, you want to try something, you want to, you know, do some things, you want to, you know, go somewhere, and you may, you know, speak to your spouse or something, or especially if the spouse is home, or if the spouse isn't home, you may want to pick up the phone and call that spouse or what have you, and interrupt their rhythm of life and what they're doing to help themselves maintain. So make sure that boredom is not your portion. When you're dealing with a person that's dealing with substance abuse, you have to know that there's nothing that you can do for them in that sense. After you have prayed for them, after you have tried to talk to them and have asked them to, you know, see about seeking help and this and that, and they have made a decision that they're going to be what they're going to be, they're going to do what they're going to do what they're going to do, you have to remove yourself out of the equation. And so interrupting their system in any type of way will cause damage to you, So get rid of boredom while you're doing this quarantine time. Get rid of boredom in this time. The second thing you want to know, be aware of, is you need to gain an ask and pray for the spirit of discernment. You want to pray and ask God for the spirit of discernment. And the reason you want to pray and ask God for the spirit of discernment is because you need to recognize and be aware of your surroundings. One of the things I always was thankful for when my husband and I were separated, I didn't talk to him much, but God always kept us connected in the spirit realm. And so even when I didn't necessarily pick up the phone and call him or talk to him by phone, I was able to pick up him in my spirit because God connected us that way. If your spouse is not home, I will ask you to pray and ask God to help you be connected to your spouse in the spirit. Because in the spirit, you're able to pray for that person specifically while they're going through the things that they're going through in their substance abuse situation. So ask God for discernment. Ask God for discernment. The third thing that I want to bring to your attention that you should be aware of about dealing with a person that have substance abuse, don't allow them to project their spirit onto you. Don't allow them to, just like I said, boredom, don't you interrupt their routine. And vice versa. Don't allow them to put their spirit on you. Don't you carry their substance. Don't you carry their abuse. Don't you carry their stuff that they're dealing with. That is not your portion. You want to be aware of these things so you'll know how to interact and how to deal with a person. And the best thing to handle all that you can do when you're dealing with a person in that situation is to ignore them. Ignore their substance abuse. Love them if you can love them upfront and personal, do so. But if you cannot, then love them from a distance. You do not want to entertain the spirit of sorcery. You do not want to entertain the spirit of sorcery. And so that was just something that I was on my heart, on my spirit when I was out here walking. And I thank God for bringing that to me. And then he brought me to Psalms 37:13, which talks about the wicked. They have no idea. It starts off in 12, talking about the wicked plans against the righteous. The wicked plans against the righteous. But God sits back and laughs because he knows that their day is coming, Listen, I pray that you get the revelation on today that God is working things out for your good. I pray that you get the revelation on today that even when the wicked tries to come up against you, that God is working things out for your good. He will not allow the wicked to prevail over the righteousness. He will not allow the wicked to prevail over the righteous. Do not let that loved one, that spouse, that individual that is dealing with that sorcery spirit, do not let them project over you. Do not let them interrupt your schedule. Do not allow boredom to take over you where you feel like you have to interrupt their rhythm or routine. Do ask God for the spirit of discernment so you will be aware of your surroundings. Sometimes as a wife, and this is one of the things I experienced, was wanting to be with your spouse in sexually or intimately, wanting to be with your spouse and not able to be or connect with them. you have to recognize, spouses, that at this point, at this moment, they are not the person that you're married. They're no longer your spouse. They're no longer Bob. They're no longer Joe. They're no longer Diane. They're no longer that person. They are now being used by an evil spirit. And so one of the things that was really, really hard for me was seeing my spouse, being still attracted to my spouse, still wanting to be with my spouse, still wanting to love my spouse, and not being able to connect with him in that sense, not being able to wrap my arms around him, not being able to kiss him, or not being able to, love on him. That is a hard thing. It's like putting a kid in the candy store and saying, you can look, but do not touch. You can look, but do not touch. And I just want to bring that to your attention. Listen, spouses, you can look, but do not touch. Do not interrupt that sorcery spirit. Let it be. Continue to stay in the presence of the Lord. Depend on God. Depend on God to see you through these times. God is working things out for your good. Listen, spouses, I hope that has been a blessing to you. Blessings.